The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with angry voices. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in their floating chairs, all talking at once. The noise was so loud that the translation devices could barely keep up. At the center of it all sat three humans, looking calm and quiet while the storm raged around them. Ambassador Jake Morrison adjusted his simple black tie and looked across the massive room. He had been Earth's representative to the Council for 15 years. In all that time, he had never seen the other species so united about anything. Today, they were united against humanity. "The humans are too dangerous," shouted Ambassador Vexthara from the Zalonian Empire. Her blue skin glowed brighter when she was angry, and right now she looked like a small star. "They spread across the galaxy like a disease. They take over planets that other species cannot even visit." Murmurs of agreement filled the hall. The Catherians nodded their large heads. The Draconians hissed their approval. Even the peaceful cetaceans seemed worried. Admiral Kate Phillips sat to Morrison's right. She commanded the human defense fleet, and her military uniform looked plain next to the fancy robes worn by other species. She leaned over and whispered, "Jake, we need to say something. They're making us sound like monsters." Dr. Lisa Wang sat on Morrison's left. She was Earth's top scientist and had spent her career sharing human discoveries with the galaxy. Her hands were folded on the table, but Morrison could see she was gripping them tightly. "Humans build weapons when they should build schools," continued another alien voice. This one came from Ambassador Kelmiran of the Hegemony. His species looked like giant insects, and when he spoke, his mandibles clicked together. "They refuse to follow the population limits we set for new colonies. Their ships go places where no sane species would dare to travel," added the representative from Altair. "They land on worlds with deadly storms and poisonous air, then somehow make them into garden planets. It is not natural." Morrison had heard these complaints many times before. Humans were too brave, too curious, too willing to take risks. They explored dangerous parts of space. They settled on worlds that other species thought were impossible to live on. They had a habit of solving problems that everyone else thought could not be solved. The council speaker, an ancient being called Morgith, raised one of his forearms for silence. He was over 3,000 years old and had seen many species rise and fall. His voice was deep and slow, like distant thunder. "Ambassador Morrison," Morgith said, "the Council has brought serious charges against your species." "How do you answer?" Morrison stood up slowly. The hall became quiet. Even the floating chairs stopped their gentle movements. Every eye, sensor, and optical organ in the room focused on the human. "Honored speaker and fellow representatives," Morrison began, his voice clear and steady. "For 30 years, humanity has been a member of this council. In that time, we have followed every law you have made. We have signed every treaty you have written. We have shared our knowledge freely with all who asked for it." He gestured toward Dr. Wang, who activated a holographic display. Images filled the air above the center of the hall. They showed human doctors working alongside alien medics, human engineers building water systems on drought-stricken worlds, human farmers teaching their techniques to species whose crops were failing. "We have helped cure 17 diseases that affected Council species," Morrison continued. "We have shared our farming methods, which now feed billions of beings across the galaxy. Our defensive technologies protect colonies from asteroid strikes and solar flares." The holographic display changed to show human shield generators protecting alien cities, human-designed medical devices saving alien lives, human agricultural domes growing food on barren worlds. "We have given freely of our knowledge, our resources, and our people," Morrison said. "Human volunteers work on disaster relief teams throughout the galaxy. Human researchers collaborate on projects that benefit all species. Human peacekeepers serve in conflict zones where other species fear to go." Ambassador Vexthara stood up, her blue glow getting brighter. "You speak of gifts, human, but what about your weapons? What about your military ships that can destroy entire fleets? Our weapons defend Council space, Admiral Phillips said, standing beside Morrison. Human ships patrol the dark zones where pirates and slavers hide. We fight battles that other species cannot win, and we do it to protect everyone in this hall. That is exactly the problem, hissed a draconian representative. You are too good at fighting, too good at surviving, too good at everything. You make the rest of us look weak. The truth was finally out in the open. Morrison looked around the hall and saw it in every alien face. Fear, not fear of human weapons or human aggression, but fear of human success. Fear that humans made other species look primitive by comparison. So what are you asking of us? Morrison said quietly. Morgeth's ancient voice filled the hall. The Council votes today on Resolution 2847. This resolution will limit human expansion to your current territories. It will reduce your military forces to defensive levels only. It will require human colonies to accept Council oversight for all major decisions. Morrison felt something cold settle in his stomach. They wanted to cage humanity, to keep humans small and controlled so the other species could feel better about themselves. You want us to stop exploring, Morrison said. Stop growing. Stop being human. We want you to stop being a threat to galactic stability, Morgeth replied. The vote was called. One by one, species cast their decisions on the great display board. Green lights for yes, red lights for no. Morrison watched as green light after green light appeared. 43 species voted yes, 7 abstained. Only 3 voted no. The hall erupted in cheers from most of the alien representatives. Finally, the dangerous humans would be controlled. Finally, the galaxy would be safe from their terrible efficiency and success. Morrison looked at Admiral Phillips and Dr. Wang. Both women nodded slightly. They had discussed this possibility many times. They had prepared for this day. Morrison gathered his papers with careful, precise movements. He closed his briefcase with a soft click that somehow seemed louder than all the cheering around him. Admiral Phillips and Dr. Wang did the same. The 3 humans stood up together. They walked toward the exit with steady, measured steps. Rushing, no dramatics, no angry words. Just 3 people leaving a meeting with dignity intact. Ambassador Morrison, Morgeth called out as they reached the massive doors. The Council expects full compliance with Resolution 2847 within 1 standard year. Morrison stopped walking. He did not turn around. The entire hall fell silent, waiting for his response. The Council has spoken, Morrison said in a voice that carried to every corner of the vast room. Humanity hears you clearly. Then he walked through the doors, followed by Phillips and Wang. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the sudden silence they left behind. None of the aliens in that hall understood what had just happened. They thought they had won a victory. They thought they had solved a problem. They had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. 6 months had passed since the Council vote, and something strange was happening across the galaxy. At first, nobody noticed the small changes. A human trade ship that usually arrived every Tuesday simply did not show up. A research station that had been sending daily reports went quiet. A mining operation that had worked for 20 years suddenly stopped answering communications. Commander Ryan Torres stood in the control room of Luna Station, watching the final transport ships leave human territory. The massive vessels were packed with people, equipment, and everything else that could be moved. Through the large windows, he could see the steady stream of ships heading toward the outer rim of known space. "Sir," called Lieutenant Amy Chun from her position at the communications desk, "the last group has left the Kepler system. All human facilities in that sector are now empty." Torres nodded without taking his eyes off the departing ships. "What about the agricultural worlds?" "New Montana is completely evacuated. So are New Texas, New Colorado, and the farming stations around Vega. The colonists took everything they could carry and destroyed nothing they left behind." This was the part that confused everyone else in the galaxy. When other species had been forced to abandon territory, they usually destroyed whatever they could not take. They poisoned wells, burned crops, and sabotaged equipment to deny their enemies any advantage. Humans were doing the opposite. They were leaving everything in perfect working order. On the farming world of New Montana, Bill Henderson loaded the last of his equipment onto a transport ship. He had spent 30 years turning this planet into one of the most productive agricultural worlds in the galaxy. His modified wheat could grow in soil that killed other crops. His cattle thrived in the thin atmosphere that made other animals sick. "Shame to leave all this behind," said his neighbor Mary Foster as she watched her prize-winning livestock being loaded into the ship's cargo bay. "Took us decades to get these animals adapted to the local conditions." Bill looked back at his fields one last time. The wheat was ready for harvest, golden and perfect under the alien sun. "Maybe whoever comes next will figure out how to use it." Mary laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They voted us out because we were too successful. Now they get to learn just how hard success really is." 3 days later, an Altarian colonial administration team arrived on New Montana. They found fully functional farms, perfect infrastructure, and detailed instruction manuals for everything, from soil treatment to animal care. There was only one problem: all the manuals were written in human languages, and the Altarians had never bothered to learn them. Within 2 weeks, the modified crops began dying. The specialized livestock fell sick. The complex irrigation systems broke down because nobody understood how to maintain them. The planet that had fed millions of beings across 3-star systems was quickly becoming barren again. The same thing was happening throughout what had been human space. Mining operations worth billions of credits sat empty because nobody else knew how to operate the equipment. Research stations went dark because alien scientists could not understand human technology. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades fell apart because human ships were no longer running them. Back on Earth, President Carol Martinez sat in her office and watched reports coming in from around the galaxy. The withdrawal was going exactly as planned. Every human citizen who wanted to leave Council space had been evacuated. Every piece of human technology that could be moved had been taken. Everything else had been left in working order with complete documentation. "How are our people adjusting to the new territories?" she asked her aide. "Better than expected, Madam President. The colony ships have found dozens of suitable worlds beyond the galactic rim. The lack of Council restrictions on genetic modification and terraforming is allowing us to adapt much faster than anyone anticipated," Martinez nodded. "And our research programs?" Dr. Nathan Brooks, head of the Human Science Consortium, joined the conversation through a video link from his new laboratory on Europa Station. "We have consolidated all human research data and personnel. Every major scientist, engineer, and technician has been recalled from Council space. Our research capabilities are now completely independent." This was the part of the withdrawal that even most humans did not fully understand. For decades, human scientists had been required to share their discoveries with the Council through joint research programs. They had published their findings in galactic databases and collaborated with alien researchers on countless projects. What they had not shared were their most advanced theories and their most ambitious experiments. "The freedom to research without Council oversight is remarkable," Dr. Brooks continued. "We are already making breakthroughs that would have taken decades under the old system, without having to explain our methods to species that think differently than we do. Our progress has accelerated dramatically." Meanwhile, in Council space, the first signs of serious trouble were beginning to appear. The Draconian Republic discovered that their most important mining operations depended entirely on human technology. When the equipment began breaking down, they realized that their own engineers did not understand how it worked. "The quantum extraction systems are failing," reported Chief Engineer Vex Thune to his superiors. "Our people know how to operate them, but not how to repair them. The humans designed these machines using principles our scientists have never studied." Similar problems were emerging across dozens of worlds. Medical facilities found that their most advanced equipment had been designed by human engineers. Agricultural worlds discovered that their most productive crops had been developed by human geneticists. Defense systems that protected entire planets from asteroid impacts had been created by human physicists. The Council had spent so much time worrying about human expansion that they had never realized how deeply human knowledge had become woven into the fabric of galactic civilization. Humans had not conquered other species through military force. They had made themselves indispensable through their innovations and their willingness to share them. Now that willingness was gone on the edge of human space, patrol ships like the one commanded by Captain Dana Walsh were establishing new boundaries. These were not the territorial borders that the Council had tried to impose, but the limits of a completely independent human civilization. Any contact from Council ships? Walsh asked her communications officer. Several attempts, Captain. They want to establish diplomatic channels and discuss our withdrawal. Their messages are becoming more urgent. Walsh looked out at the stars beyond her ship's windows. Somewhere out there, human colony ships were already establishing settlements on worlds the Council did not even know existed. Human research stations were making discoveries that would change everything humans thought they knew about the universe. Send a standard response, Walsh said. Inform them that humanity is no longer part of Council jurisdiction and wishes them well in their future endeavors. It was polite, professional, and completely final. Humanity was not angry at the Council. They were not seeking revenge or trying to cause harm. They were simply gone, taking with them 30 years of accumulated knowledge, innovation, and expertise that the galaxy had grown to depend on without even realizing it. The Council had wanted humanity to know their place in the galactic order. Now they were about to learn what that place had really been. 2 years after humanity had quietly walked away from the Galactic Council, the first emergency session was called. The great hall that had once been filled with confident voices now echoed with panic and desperation. Ambassador Kefmara of the Hegemony stood before Speaker Morgeth, her usual calm completely gone. "Honored Speaker," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "the agricultural crisis in our outer territories has reached catastrophic levels. Our harvests have failed for 3 consecutive seasons. Without the crop modifications that humans developed for our soil conditions, we are facing widespread famine." The holographic displays above the hall showed images that made many representatives look away. Barren fields stretched across multiple worlds. Empty grain silos stood like monuments to failure. Crowds of hungry beings gathered around distribution centers that had no food to give. "Surely your own scientists can adapt the techniques," Morgeth said, though his ancient voice carried little confidence. "That is the problem, Speaker. We do not understand the techniques. The humans left detailed manuals, but they are written in ways our scientists cannot follow. The genetic modifications involve principles that our best biologists have never encountered." Similar reports came from every corner of Council space. The Draconian Republic's mining operations had shut down completely. Their engineers stood helplessly beside machines worth billions of credits, unable to fix even simple problems. The quantum extraction systems that had made deep space mining possible were failing one by one, and no one knew how to repair them. "Our entire industrial base is collapsing," reported Admiral Kextel from his flagship. "Human engineers trained our people to operate the equipment, but they never explained how it actually worked. We are like children playing with toys we do not understand." The Andromedans brought even worse news. Dr. Zixtel, their chief medical officer, appeared via hologram from a hospital that was fighting a losing battle against disease. "The Catherian plague has returned," he announced grimly. "The strain is resistant to all our traditional treatments. Our analysis shows it is a mutation of the disease that humans helped us eliminate decades ago. We need their medical databases and research records immediately." "Contact the human embassy," Morgeth ordered. The Council's communication officer looked uncomfortable. "Sir, humanity closed all diplomatic channels 18 months ago. They have not responded to any of our attempts at contact." While the Council struggled with cascading failures, something remarkable was happening in the territory that humans now called home. On the research station orbiting New Geneva, Admiral Tony Richardson reviewed reports that would have amazed the galaxy if they had been allowed to see them. "The exploration data is incredible," he told the assembled military leadership. "Our scouts have discovered 43 habitable systems in the past year alone. Without Council environmental regulations slowing us down, we are expanding faster than we ever thought possible." Captain Dana Walsh, now head of the Deep Space Exploration Division, nodded enthusiastically. "The freedom to explore without filing impact reports for every asteroid we scan has changed everything. We can investigate a system, analyze its potential, and establish a colony in the time it used to take just to get Council approval for a survey mission." The difference was remarkable. Under Council oversight, every human expansion had required months of bureaucratic processes, environmental impact studies, territorial negotiations, cultural sensitivity reviews, and resource allocation hearings had slowed human growth to a crawl. Now, free from those restrictions, human expansion was accelerating exponentially. Dr. Helen Chang, Earth's chief science officer, presented findings that were even more impressive. "Our research productivity has increased by over 300% since we left Council space. Without having to share every discovery through joint research programs, we can pursue lines of investigation that other species might not understand or approve of." She activated a holographic display that showed breakthrough after breakthrough. Faster than light communication systems that could send messages across the galaxy instantly. Quantum computing arrays that could solve problems in minutes that would have taken years. Biological enhancement techniques that could adapt humans to survive in any environment. "The key difference," Dr. Chang explained, "is that we no longer have to compromise our research to accommodate species with different cognitive patterns. Human science works best when humans are free to think like humans." Back in Council space, the problems continued to multiply. The Zilonian Empire, which had been most vocal about human aggression, discovered that their entire defense grid depended on human technology. When the shield generators began failing, they made a terrifying discovery. "The systems are encrypted with quantum locks," reported their chief engineer to the military council. "The humans built security measures into every piece of equipment they gave us. Without their cooperation, we cannot even access basic maintenance protocols." It was a masterpiece of engineering foresight. Humans had shared their technology freely, but they had also protected it. Every major system included safeguards that required human knowledge to override. The galaxy had been using human technology for decades without realizing that humans still controlled it. The Council called another emergency session, this one larger than any in galactic history. Representatives from over 200 species gathered, many appearing only as holograms because their governments could no longer afford the energy costs of long-distance travel. "We must face the truth," announced Ambassador Rendar of the Cetacean Collective. "Our decision regarding humanity was a mistake. We need to find a way to repair our relationship with them." But when they tried to make contact, they discovered something that chilled every species to their core. Humanity's communication networks no longer operated on the same principles as galactic systems. In just 2 years, humans had developed entirely new technologies that Council scientists could not even detect, much less understand. Deep space monitoring stations began picking up energy signatures from human territory that defied known physics. The readings showed power outputs that should have been impossible to generate, much less control. Whatever humans were building in their new territories, it operated on scientific principles that the galaxy had never encountered. Dr. Yantara, the Council's head of xenological studies, presented her analysis to a hushed assembly. "The energy patterns we are detecting suggest that humanity has developed technology that manipulates space-time itself. Their ships appear to be traveling at speeds that our physics say are impossible." "Are you telling us," Speaker Morjeff asked slowly, "that in 2 years humanity has advanced beyond our understanding?" "I am telling you," Dr. Yantara replied, "that humanity was already beyond our understanding. We just never realized it, because they were sharing only their most basic discoveries with us. Now that they are free to develop their full potential, They are advancing at a rate that makes our greatest achievements look primitive. The implications were staggering. The Council had not simply lost a member species. They had expelled the most scientifically advanced civilization in the galaxy, mistaking their restraint for their limits and their cooperation for weakness. And now that civilization was free to show the galaxy what humans could really accomplish when no one was holding them back. 5 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council, and the situation had become desperate beyond anyone's worst fears. What had started as technical problems and food shortages had grown into a complete breakdown of galactic civilization. Council Emergency Coordinator Thexmaran stood before a massive holographic display that showed the current state of their territory. Red zones marked critical system failures, yellow showed declining areas, and green represented stable regions. The map was almost entirely red. The crisis has spread beyond our ability to control, Thexmaran reported to the Emergency Committee. 73 colony worlds are experiencing complete infrastructure collapse. Our trade networks have declined by 60%. 17 species are reporting technological regression to pre-spaceflight levels. The reality was worse than the numbers suggested. Humanity had been so deeply integrated into galactic society that their absence created a cascade of failures no one had anticipated. Human-trained engineers had maintained systems on hundreds of worlds. Human agricultural specialists had advised on terraforming projects across the galaxy. Human medical researchers had quietly worked on cures for diseases that affected dozens of species. Admiral Kexthal of the Draconian Republic provided the military assessment that terrified everyone. Our fleet capabilities have degraded to dangerous levels. We are flying ships that we no longer understand. Human defensive innovations were built into our vessels at the molecular level. When these systems fail, we cannot repair them. But the most frightening discovery came from Dr. Yantara, the Council's senior xenotechnologist. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Our deep space sensors have detected massive energy signatures from the direction of former human space. The readings are unlike anything in our scientific databases. The holographic display changed to show sensor data that made no sense to anyone present. The energy patterns were clearly artificial, but they operated according to principles that seemed to bend the laws of physics. We sent our most advanced scout ships to investigate, Dr. Yantara continued. What they found is impossible to explain. The humans appear to have constructed structures that exist partially outside normal spacetime. Our instruments can detect them, but cannot measure their true size or capabilities. Speaker Morgith, now looking every one of his 3,000 years, processed this information slowly. Are you suggesting that humanity has developed technology that surpasses our understanding in only 5 years? I am suggesting, Dr. Yantara replied carefully, that without the constraints of council oversight and the delays of joint research committees, humanity has advanced at a rate that defies every model of technological development we have ever studied. The silence in the chamber was complete. Every representative understood what this meant. They had not simply made an enemy of humanity. They had freed the most advanced species in the galaxy from all restrictions and then lost contact with them completely. Meanwhile, in the expanding realm of human space, President Martinez stood in the observation deck of New Geneva Station. The massive structure existed partially in normal space and partially in what human scientists now called fold space. Through the reinforced viewing ports, she could see construction projects that would have been considered magic just a few years earlier. Engineer Paul Johnson, head of the Dimensional Engineering Corps, pointed toward the shipyards visible in the distance. The fold space construction facilities are operating at full capacity, Madam President. We are producing vessels that can cross the galaxy in days rather than months. Dr. Susan Lee, now director of the Human Advancement Project, joined them at the viewing wall. Our population growth has exceeded all projections as well. The new worlds we have discovered are not just habitable, they are paradise worlds. Without council restrictions on genetic enhancement and life extension treatments, our colonies are thriving beyond our most optimistic hopes. President Martinez nodded thoughtfully. Any word from our monitoring stations about council activities? They are attempting to re-establish contact through multiple channels, Dr. Lee reported. The messages are becoming increasingly desperate. Our intelligence networks indicate that their infrastructure is collapsing at an accelerating rate. Their desperation is understandable, Paul observed. According to our data, they were far more dependent on human innovation than anyone realized, including ourselves. We were not just members of their civilization, we were the engine that drove their progress. The irony was not lost on any of them. The Council had accused humanity of being too aggressive, too expansionist, too disruptive to galactic stability. In removing humans from their society, they had discovered that human disruption had actually been the force that kept their civilization advancing back in Council space. A desperate group of young alien scientists had formed what they called the Human Studies Coalition. Led by Dr. Kalthara, a brilliant Andromedan physicist, they were attempting to reverse-engineer human technologies with increasingly frantic urgency. The quantum matrices in their shield generators operate according to mathematical principles that do not exist in our scientific literature, Dr. Kalthara explained to her research team. It is as if humans were working with additional dimensions of reality that we cannot perceive or measure. Her assistant, a young Cytherian named Zixpal, looked up from his analysis station with growing alarm. Doctor, I've been reviewing historical records of human scientific publications from before their departure. Their theoretical work from decades ago suggested possibilities that our greatest minds dismissed as fantasy. What kind of possibilities? Folded spacetime, temporal manipulation, consciousness-machine integration, biological immortality, matter-energy conversion. Zixpal's voice grew quieter as he continued. They were not sharing their current technology with us. They were sharing the basic fundamentals while keeping their advanced research completely secret. The implications were staggering. For decades, humanity had been operating on a level of scientific understanding far beyond what they had revealed to the galactic community. The Council had not lost a member species that contributed to their civilization. They had lost the secret. Architects of their entire technological base. Dr. Kalthara stared at the data displays surrounding her workstation. We thought we were equals, working together to advance galactic knowledge. In reality, we were students being taught elementary lessons by teachers who were centuries ahead of us. And now those teachers are gone. Zixpal added grimly. The final revelation came when Council monitoring stations detected something that changed everything. Humanity was making contact with civilizations beyond the galaxy itself. Radio transmissions in human languages were being sent toward distant galaxy clusters, and the energy signatures suggested these communications were being answered. Humanity had not just walked away from the Galactic Council. They had transcended the galaxy entirely, reaching out to establish relationships with civilizations so advanced that the Council had never even suspected they existed. The galaxy that had once seemed so vast and full of wonders was suddenly revealed to be a small, primitive corner of a universe that humanity was already beginning to explore and understand in ways that left every other species feeling like children who had just discovered that their neighborhood was not the entire world. 10 years had passed since humanity's silent departure from the Galactic Council, and the contrast between the two civilizations could not have been starker. Where Council space struggled with failing systems and dying worlds, human territory had become something that approached pure science fiction made real. Ambassador Vexthara, the same Zelonian who had led the campaign against humanity a decade earlier, stood in the ruins of what had once been the galaxy's most advanced research facility. The Zeta Prime Institute had been a joint venture, with human scientists providing 30% of the research staff and most of the theoretical breakthroughs. When they left, they had taken not just their people, but their understanding of how the facility's most critical systems actually worked. How long until we can restore the quantum laboratories? She asked the facility's current director. Though she already knew the answer would disappoint her, Dr. Morthick shook his head sadly. We may never be able to restore them completely. The humans did not just operate the equipment, they designed it using scientific principles that we are still trying to understand. We are essentially primitive beings attempting to use technology from an advanced civilization. The bitter irony of his words was not lost on either of them. The emergency council session that had been called was the largest gathering in recorded galactic history. Representatives from over 200 species packed the chambers, with many more attending virtually because their governments could no longer afford the energy costs of interstellar travel. Speaker Morgith, now requiring a mobility device due to his advanced age, called the session to order with a voice that carried the weight of impending doom. We gathered today to address the most significant crisis in our recorded history. It has become undeniably clear that our decision regarding humanity was not merely an error, but the greatest mistake our civilization has ever made. A wave of bitter agreement rippled through the assembly. The phrase "not merely an error" was diplomatic, language that barely concealed the magnitude of their catastrophic miscalculation. Council intelligence. Director Kexton presented reconnaissance data that left the assembly in stunned silence. Our long-range sensors have detected human activity across a sphere of space, approximately 60 times larger than their original territory. They appear to have colonized, terraformed, or constructed habitable environments on over 4,000 worlds. The holographic display showed the scope of human expansion in overwhelming detail. Where 10 years ago humanity had occupied a modest cluster of systems, they now controlled a vast region of space that dwarfed the entire Council territories combined. More concerning, Kexton continued, is the nature of their constructions. We have identified what appear to be artificial ring worlds surrounding entire stars, space habitats that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and energy signatures that suggest they have achieved practical control over matter and energy at the atomic level. Dr. Yintara, now the Council's most senior xenotechnologist, provided context that left many representatives struggling to comprehend the implications. Based on our analysis, humanity has achieved a level of technological sophistication that places them approximately 1,000 to 1,500 years ahead of our most advanced species. They accomplished this advancement in a single decade. The chamber fell into absolute silence as the full meaning of her words sank in. Ambassador Kelmyron of the hegemony finally found his voice. What exactly are you telling us, Doctor? I am telling you, Dr. Yintara replied with scientific precision, that we expelled the most technologically advanced species in galactic history from our alliance, because we feared their potential for growth. That potential has now been realized far beyond anything we could have imagined possible. The Council voted unanimously to attempt reconciliation with humanity. Elaborate diplomatic missions were planned, formal apologies were drafted, and reparations were calculated that would have bankrupted half the galaxy. The most skilled orators prepared speeches acknowledging the terrible mistake that had been made, but when the first diplomatic vessel reached the border of human space, they encountered something that no one had anticipated, a response that was polite, professional, and absolutely final. Captain Rodriguez of the human patrol ship Endeavour responded to the Council diplomatic vessel with the same calm courtesy that had always characterized human interactions. This is human space. We appreciate your desire to communicate, but humanity is no longer interested in galactic affairs. Please, Ambassador Kelmyron pleaded over the communication channel. We recognize the magnitude of our errors. We are prepared to discuss terms for renewed cooperation, reparations for our mistakes, and a complete restructuring of the Council to accommodate human needs. Captain Rodriguez's response was delivered with the same measured professionalism that Ambassador Morrison had shown a decade earlier. Humanity has evolved beyond the need for galactic cooperation. We wish the Council well in their endeavors, but we are no longer part of your civilization. This communication is concluded. The diplomatic vessel was not attacked, threatened, or harmed in any way. It was simply escorted to the border of human space and politely requested to depart, back on Earth, now the administrative center of a civilization spanning thousands of worlds and multiple dimensions. President Martinez reviewed the reports of the Council's increasingly desperate diplomatic attempts. She stood in her office aboard Terra Prime Station, a massive structure that served as humanity's capital and existed simultaneously across 7 different dimensional phases. They still do not understand the fundamental nature of what has occurred, she told her advisors. They believe this is about forgiveness or compensation. They have not realized that we have simply outgrown them as a species outgrows childhood. Dr. Chang, now in her 2nd century of life thanks to human longevity enhancement, nodded in agreement. We have achieved post-scarcity civilization, dimensional engineering, consciousness, transfer, and matter-energy equivalence. What could the Council possibly offer us that we cannot create for ourselves? Admiral Richardson, also benefiting from life extension technology, activated displays showing the scope of human civilization. Cities that floated freely in the atmospheres of gas giants, planets enclosed in artificial shells that captured every photon of stellar energy, entire star systems where every atom had been reorganized for optimal utility. The galaxy wanted US to be less aggressive, less expansionist, less disruptive to their established order, he observed with quiet irony. Instead, we have become something they cannot even comprehend. We have transcended their entire framework of what civilization means. The final revelation came when Council deep space monitors detected transmissions that confirmed their worst fears. Humanity was actively communicating with extragalactic civilizations, establishing relationships with species and cultures that existed in distant galaxy clusters beyond the Council's ability to even detect. Humanity had not just walked away from the Galactic Council. They had walked away from the galaxy itself, ascending to a level of existence where the Council's petty, territorial disputes and resource limitations were as irrelevant as the concerns of insects. In the end, the Council received exactly what they had demanded: a galaxy without aggressive, expansionist humans disrupting their natural order. What they discovered instead was that they were now the primitive species, looking up at the stars and wondering what magnificent civilizations existed just beyond their comprehension and somewhere in the vast expanse of human space. Ambassador Jake Morrison, still alive after more than a century thanks to human medical advances, occasionally looked back toward Council territory and smiled quietly. The Council had wanted humanity to know their place in the galaxy. Now they did. It was everywhere humanity chose to be, completely beyond the Council's ability to understand or influence, in a universe far larger and more wonderful than any of them had ever dared to imagine.